Not every car gets its moment in the sun. Some are born into crowded lineups, forgotten marketing campaigns, or awkward designs that never quite connect with buyers. These cars weren't disasters necessarily, just so forgettable that they vanished from memory without protest. They didn't earn cult followings, restoration projects, or retro revivals. These 8 American cars quietly disappeared, erased from history as if they were never there at all.
Dear viewer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support.
Number 8. By the late 1970s, American automakers were scrambling to adjust to a world that was quickly outgrowing land yachts and thirsty V8s. Fuel economy, emissions regulations, and a desire for smaller, more efficient vehicles pushed brands like Chrysler to rethink their traditional offerings. Enter the 1979 Chrysler LeBaron Medallion, a car that tried to carry the brand's traditional air of refinement and prestige into a downsized, more compact format. The goal was simple: blend luxury styling and upscale comfort with the compact footprint that post-oil crisis buyers demanded. But what Chrysler produced was something that barely registered with the public. A car wedged awkwardly between full-size opulence and compact sensibility, forgotten as quickly as it appeared. The LeBaron name had long been associated with Chrysler's upscale, near-luxury offerings, and in 1977, it became Chrysler's smallest model after replacing the departed Valiant and Dart compacts. By 1979, the LeBaron was available in several trims, including the top-tier Medallion. The Medallion was Chrysler's attempt to sell a compact sedan with full-size luxury appeal, featuring opera windows and a vinyl roof for that high-end 70s flair, plush velour or leather upholstery, wood grain trim, and extra sound insulation, hidden headlamps and additional chrome to distinguish it from its Dodge Aspen Plymouth Volare siblings, a 225 slant 6 or optional 318 V8, both paired with Chrysler's Torque Flight automatic transmission. It was meant to offer the quietness, comfort, and image of a luxury car, just shrunk to mid-size dimensions. Chrysler thought it could pull buyers from brands like Cadillac and Lincoln, who were now forced to look at smaller cars. On paper, the LeBaron Medallion sounded like a solid idea, but in reality, the car failed to stand out, even within Chrysler's own lineup. The LeBaron Medallion was built on the aging F-body platform, shared with the Dodge Aspen and Plymouth Volare. These cars had already gained reputations for being unreliable, with rust issues, suspension troubles, and poor fit and finish. Putting fancy trim and a padded roof on the same underpinnings didn't fool buyers who recognized it as a gussied-up economy car. The base 225 slant 6 engine was reliable, but far from thrilling. Even the optional 318 V8 was strangled by emissions equipment and felt sluggish by 1979 standards, especially in a car marketed as premium. The driving experience didn't deliver the kind of smoothness or quietness expected from a true luxury sedan. The Medallion was too expensive for economy-minded buyers, but didn't offer enough refinement for those truly shopping for luxury. It was a middle-child car, too posh for compact buyers, too cheap and cramped for luxury shoppers. It competed with the Buick Skylark Limited, Ford Granada Ghia, and Mercury Monarch, but failed to surpass them in either comfort or reliability. Reviews at the time were lukewarm. Automotive journalists noted that the LeBaron Medallion looked nice from a distance, but its dated chassis, mediocre handling, and subpar build quality kept it from earning respect. Buyers looking for smaller luxury sedans increasingly turned to imports, like the Volvo 240, BMW 320i, or Audi 5000. Sales were modest at best, and by the time the 1980s rolled around, Chrysler shifted the LeBaron nameplate onto the K-Car platform, where it had far greater success. The Medallion trim quietly disappeared after 1981, and few people noticed. The 1979 Chrysler LeBaron Medallion is rarely remembered today because it sits in a strange gray zone of automotive history. Not bad enough to become a cautionary tale, not distinctive enough to become a cult classic, not successful enough to matter in Chrysler's long-term narrative. Most surviving examples have long since rusted away or been parted out. Classic car shows rarely feature one. There's no aftermarket love for the model. Even vintage Chrysler enthusiasts tend to overlook it in favor of early Imperials, 50s New Yorkers, or the later turbocharged K-platform LeBarons of the 1980s. The 1979 Chrysler LeBaron Medallion was Chrysler's answer to a question few people were asking. What if we put opera lights and chrome on a car that drives like an old taxicab? It's a relic of a transitional time, when Detroit was struggling to redefine luxury in a fuel-conscious era. It was born out of necessity, not innovation. It didn't move the needle in any significant direction, and by the time the dust settled, it had already faded into the wallpaper of history. Number 7, the company had stumbled in 1962 with a lineup of cars that were downsized abruptly due to misinformation about Chevrolet's plans. The result? A batch of awkwardly proportioned full-size cars that confused customers and hurt sales. When 1963 rolled around, Dodge made a few styling tweaks and added more variety to its lineup, hoping to regain lost ground. One of the offerings was the Dodge 330, a full-size sedan that was built to hit a price point, not to make an impression. It sat in the middle of Dodge's hierarchy, below the premium Polara, but above the ultra-basic 220. The 330 was functional, affordable, and reliable, but utterly forgettable. The 1963 Dodge 330 was part of the B-body platform, Dodge's mid-size full-size hybrid layout. While its proportions were cleaner than the controversial 1962 models, it was still a long way from glamorous. Key characteristics of the 1963 330 sedan included plain steel wheels with basic hubcaps, minimal chrome trim, a flat bench seat interior wrapped in cheap vinyl or cloth, a dashboard with only the essentials, speedometer, fuel gauge, and a few warning lights. Available with either a slant 6 engine or a V8, 318, 361, or even 383 in some models. In essence, the Dodge 330 was designed to serve fleet buyers, families on a tight budget, and municipalities needing reliable, no-nonsense transport. Police departments also favored it when equipped with the larger engines. The 1963 model had improved proportions over its 1962 predecessor, but Dodge still struggled to find its aesthetic identity. The 330's design was defined by boxy lines that lacked curves or personality, a generic front grille with horizontal bars, slab-sided panels and unadorned body lines, a rear end that looked almost like an afterthought. While other brands were starting to show flair, think of the sculpted fenders on a 63 Chevy Impala or the jet-age touches on a Pontiac Catalina. The Dodge 330 looked like a car-shaped placeholder. It wasn't ugly, but it sure wasn't memorable. Despite its plain appearance, the 330 could be ordered with surprisingly potent engines. This was typical of the era. You could buy a stripped-down cheap car and stuff it with a big block V8. Enthusiasts sometimes pick the Dodge 330 as a base for drag racing builds, especially with the 383 V8 or when converted into a superstock version. But for the average sedan buyer, the 330 was more likely to come with a 225 slant 6 or 318 small block. Neither engine was exciting, but they were dependable and offered decent fuel economy for the time. Handling? Predictable and boat-like. Brakes? Manual drums unless you paid more. Steering? Sloppy and numb. In a word, forgettable. The 1963 Dodge 330 never carved out a real identity. It was a mid-level car in a mid-performance market, offering nothing bold in styling, engineering, or features. Reasons it faded into obscurity. It wasn't glamorous enough to attract aspirational buyers. It wasn't cheap enough to be a volume seller like the Plymouth Valiant. It had no luxury appeal like the Polara 500. It wasn't exciting like the Pontiac GTO, which would debut the next year. The 330 was essentially a rental car on wheels, something you might drive, but not something you'd remember. The Dodge 330 would only last one more year before it was dropped after 1964. By 1965, Dodge's full-size and intermediate lines were reshuffled again to better align with market trends. The 330 nameplate was gone. Few mourned its loss. Today, unless you're a Mopar diehard, Chances are you've never even heard of the 330, and if you've seen one at a car show, it was probably modified beyond recognition for racing. Even among 60s Mopars, the 330 sits near the bottom of the collector interest list, largely because its design is bland. Its production numbers weren't rare enough to make it special. Its trim level is too basic to be interesting. The 1963 Dodge 330 sedan is a prime example of a car that did its job and then vanished into history without making a ripple. It was competent transportation for the budget-conscious. A tool, not a trophy. While other 1960s cars have become cultural touchstones or performance legends, the 330 lives in the shadows, not because it failed, but because it never really tried to stand out. By 1969, the American auto industry was knee-deep in the muscle car wars, with manufacturers building ever more powerful and aggressive cars to appeal to young, thrill-seeking buyers. But while pony cars like the Mustang and Camaro grabbed headlines and bedroom wall posters, full-size coupes were still trying to claim their slice of the performance pie. Enter the 1969 Ford XL Sports Roof, a car that wore the clothes of a muscle machine, but was saddled with the bones of a boulevard cruiser. A full-size Ford with fastback styling and optional big block engines, the XL Sports Roof was Ford's attempt to blend size, luxury, and speed. Unfortunately, despite its looks and power potential, the XL never earned a place in the muscle car canon, or even in the memory of most enthusiasts. The Ford XL had existed in various forms since the mid-1960s as a step up from the Galaxie 500, adding a touch of sportiness and optional performance hardware. For 1969, the XL received the Sports Roof treatment, Ford's term for its fastback styling, similar to the Mustang. The XL Sports Roof was, based on Ford's full-size platform, positioned above the Galaxie and below the top trim LTD, designed to look fast, with a long sloping roofline, recessed grille, and dual headlights. Available as a two-door hardtop, sports roof, or convertible, it promised muscle car aesthetics in a more mature, spacious package. Think Mustang, but with a 121-inch wheelbase. Ford wanted the XL Sports Roof to turn heads, and on paper it kind of worked. It had a wide, gaping front grille with hidden headlights on some models, fastback roofline borrowed from the Mustang, sculpted body sides and minimal chrome for a clean look, dual exhaust tips and performance badging, if you tick the right boxes. But for all its flair, the XL looked oddly bloated. The fastback design that looked great on a small car like the Mustang felt forced on a full-size frame. The result was a car that looked fast, standing still, but also looked too heavy to do anything about it. Buyers could order the 1969 Ford XL Sports Roof with a variety of engines, including 302 V8, basic and underwhelming, 351 V8, more respectable, 390 V8, decent torque, but not thrilling, 429 Thunderjet V8, the big gun with 360 horsepower, 428 Cobra Jet, optional, rare, and turned the XL into a real sleeper. With the right engine, the XL Sports Roof could definitely move, but unlike a Mustang or Torino GT, it lacked the tight handling and nimble chassis to go with that power. At over 4,200 pounds, it felt more like a land yacht than a street brawler. Step inside the XL Sports Roof, and the story changes. It looked sporty on the outside, but the interior was pure full-size Ford bench or optional bucket seats with lots of vinyl. A massive dashboard with minimalist instrumentation, wall-to-wall carpeting, thick doors, and a wide rear bench. Optional air conditioning, power windows, and an AM/FM radio. This was not a muscle car cockpit. It was a gentleman's cruiser pretending to be aggressive. Despite Ford's marketing push, the XL Sports Roof failed to gain traction for a few key reasons. Too big for the muscle crowd. Buyers wanting performance went for Mustangs, Torinos, or Fairlanes. Too sporty for the traditional full-size buyer. Those looking for comfort chose the LTD or Mercury Marquis. Lacked a clear identity. It wasn't truly luxurious, and it wasn't convincingly sporty. Overshadowed by smaller stars. 1969 was a blockbuster year for performance cars. Chevelle SS, GTO Judge, Dodge Charger RT. The XL didn't make the shortlist. As a result, the XL was trapped in no man's land. It sold in modest numbers but never inspired loyalty or built a cult following. The Ford XL name would linger into 1970, but by 1971 it was gone from the full-size lineup. Ford focused on more practical full-size offerings and doubled down on the Mustang and Torino for performance. The sports roof design would live on in other Ford models, but the XL sports roof itself faded into history, rarely seen at car shows, seldom mentioned in collector circles, and often confused with the Galaxy or LTD. Today, it sits in the shadows of muscle car history, a curious side note rather than a celebrated chapter. The 1969 Ford XL sports roof tried to bridge two worlds, the style of a muscle car and the size of a luxury coupe. But in trying to be both, it ended up being neither. It lacked the visceral thrills of a true performance machine and the elegance of a high-end cruiser. In the end, it was a stylish misfire, remembered by few, owned by fewer, and appreciated mostly by Ford historians and collectors of oddballs. If you're writing a chapter on forgotten muscle car imitators of the late 60s, the XL sports roof deserves a page. Not because it triumphed, but because it tried. Number 5. In the early 1980s, the convertible was an endangered species. Rising safety regulations, declining demand, and the rise of the coupe and hatchback had nearly killed the drop top in the American market. By the late 70s, many manufacturers had given up on open-air driving altogether. But then, out of the blue, Lee Iacocca's Chrysler Corporation, still climbing out of near bankruptcy, brought it back. The 1982 Dodge 400 convertible, and specifically the 1984 model, marked one of the first true American ragtops in years. It was based on the K-Car platform, and it was Chrysler's way of saying, "We're back and we're fun again." Unfortunately, while it was a novelty at the time, the Dodge 400 convertible quickly became one of the most forgettable footnotes in automotive history. Let's start with the bones of the 400 convertible. The Dodge 400 was part of Chrysler's extended K-Car family, a modular front-wheel drive platform that saved the company from collapse. Originally seen in the Dodge Aries and Plymouth Reliant, the K platform was stretched and dressed up to create more luxurious variants. The Dodge 400 was introduced in 1982 as an upscale alternative to the Aries. It had a longer wheelbase, more trim and chrome, softer suspension tuning, and the rare convertible option, returning the ragtop to the Chrysler fold after years of absence. But underneath, it was still a front-wheel drive economy car, wearing its Sunday clothes. By 1984, the convertible version was in its third and final model year. It was the most affordable convertible on the American market, and Chrysler leaned hard into that marketing. Some key specs and features: 2.2-liter inline-4, 96 horsepower. Optional Mitsubishi, 2.6-liter i4, 101 horsepower, 0.3-speed automatic or 5-speed manual. Front-wheel drive, a rarity among convertibles at the time. Cloth top with glass rear window. Standard features included power windows, power top, AM/FM stereo, and plenty of faux wood grain. From the outside, the 400 looked boxy and conservative, clearly still tethered to the styling cues of economy sedans. But when the top was down, it made a statement. Convertibles were back. The 400 convertible wasn't exactly a performance car, but that wasn't the point. It was a lifestyle accessory for the early 80s, a nod to fun in a sea of austerity. However, it had plenty of downsides. Underpowered engines, 0 to 60 took nearly 14 seconds. Wallowy suspension, great for comfort, bad for corners. Cowl shake and body flex, common in early unibody convertibles. Interior trim, cheap plastics, and styling that aged quickly. Limited back seat, technically a 4-seater, but barely usable in back. Still, in an era where few cars offered the top-down experience, the 400 convertible stood almost alone, especially at its price point. Despite the novelty, the Dodge 400 convertible would disappear after the 1983 model year as a coupe and sedan, and the convertible lingered only through 1984. Here's why. Rebadging confusion. Chrysler introduced the LeBaron convertible, essentially the same car with nicer trim, which outsold the Dodge version and stole its spotlight. Limited brand prestige. Dodge wasn't seen as a premium brand, so buyers willing to splurge on a convertible tended to choose LeBaron. Outdated quickly. The boxy 400 looked old even in 1984, and with more aerodynamic styling just around the corner, it felt behind the curve. Better competition appeared. Ford launched the Mustang convertible in 1983, offering real performance and sporty styling that the 400 simply couldn't match. Ask most car enthusiasts today to name a 1980s convertible, and they might recall the Mustang, Camaro, or Chrysler LeBaron. Few will mention the Dodge 400 convertible, despite its early role in reviving the body style. It lacks collector interest, aftermarket support, nostalgia appeal. Even among K-car fans, a rare breed, the 400 convertible is viewed more as a stepping stone than a standout. The 1984 Dodge 400 convertible deserves some credit. It was among the first American convertibles of the modern era, and it symbolized Chrysler's resilience and willingness to take risks during its comeback years. But let's be honest, it was a compromise. A low-powered, boxy front driver trying to carry the torch for top-down driving. It had neither the looks nor the performance to make a lasting impression, and it was quickly eclipsed by newer, sharper, and better cars. Today, it's mostly a curiosity, a reminder that even during rough times, car companies are willing to take bold steps, and sometimes those bold steps are quickly forgotten. Number 4. In the wake of World War II, Willys Overland was riding high on the success of its military workhorse, the Jeep. The public loved the rugged image of the war-proven Willys MB, and Willys knew they had to evolve that momentum into a peacetime product line. Enter the 1946 Willys Jeep station wagon, a practical, boxy utility vehicle that blurred the lines between car and truck. While it lacked glamour or performance, it was the first all-steel station wagon made in America and a key precursor to the SUV, and yet today most people have never heard of it. Before this, station wagons were largely made with wooden bodies, either partially or entirely. These so-called woodies were expensive, labor-intensive, and vulnerable to weather and rot. Willys took a different route. The 1946 Jeep station wagon was designed by Brooks Stevens, a famed industrial designer. It featured an all-steel body, a radical departure at the time. Its boxy, slab-sided look was purely functional, but visually distinctive. The vertical grille bars were stylized to mimic traditional wood paneling, giving a woody look without the maintenance headache. This made the vehicle cheaper to produce, easier to maintain, and stronger. For working-class Americans, farmers, and small business owners, it was exactly what they needed in a post-war economy: simple, durable, and versatile. The station wagon was built on a rugged ladder-type frame and shared its DNA with Willys military and utility vehicles. Initial models had two-wheel drive only, powered by the Willys Go Devil, 63 horsepower, 134 cubic inch inline 4. It was no speed demon. Suspension was basic, ride comfort was stiff, and amenities were sparse. Seating was minimal, often with bare-bones bench seats and simple dashboards. It wasn't refined, it wasn't fast, but it was tough, and that was its charm. While not an off-roader like the CJ Jeep, the station wagon still offered high ground clearance and utility-focused practicality. It could serve as a family hauler during the week and a work truck on the weekends. The Willys Jeep station wagon was designed for a very different kind of buyer than a Ford or Chevy sedan owner. It wasn't about comfort or speed, it was about function. Farmers used them to haul produce. Tradesmen loaded them with tools and gear. Small-town families appreciated the ruggedness and room. Its unique combination of attributes made it a predecessor to both the modern SUV and the crossover. Yet it rarely gets recognized in that lineage. Even more significant, in 1949, Willys introduced four-wheel drive versions of the station wagon, creating what many consider the first true sport utility vehicle. But even the earlier two-wheel drive 1946 version deserves its place in the spotlight for its structural innovation. Despite its significance, the 1946 Willys Jeep station wagon is largely absent from popular automotive history. Why? Lack of style. It was homely, boxy, and unrefined, nowhere near as glamorous as a 1946 Cadillac or Chrysler. Low production volume compared to big three station wagons. No performance appeal. This wasn't a car to race or cruise in. It was utilitarian in the purest sense. Narrow nostalgia base. Unlike the CJ Series Jeeps or Ford's sleek post-war cars, few people have emotional ties to this basic hauler. While collectors of early Jeeps and utility vehicles remember it fondly, it's a niche audience. And yet, the 1946 Willys Jeep station wagon helped pave the way for a market that would explode decades later. Its all-steel construction influenced generations of family haulers and sport wagons. Its rugged utility-first design laid groundwork for the SUV boom that began in the 1980s. Without it, vehicles like the Chevy Suburban, Jeep Wagoneer, and even the Ford Explorer might have looked very different. Willys continued developing the idea through the 1950s, eventually merging it with true off-road ability. But the humble 1946 model remains the origin point for that evolution. The 1946 Willys Jeep station wagon was not a glamorous car. It was not fast, luxurious, or stylish, but it mattered. It introduced the concept of a durable, all-weather, all-purpose family hauler long before SUV was a household term. It blended truck toughness with car-like practicality, and in doing so, helped birth a category that dominates today's roads. Though forgotten by most, this rugged little wagon deserves respect as one of the most quietly influential vehicles of the 20th century. Number 3. When enthusiasts talk about the Fox body era, the Ford Mustang almost always takes center stage. Its angular styling, affordability, and mod-friendly platform made it a hit throughout the 1980s. But lurking quietly in the background was its corporate cousin, the Mercury Capri RS. The 1986 Mercury Capri RS represents the final year of the Capri in the US and the end of Mercury's attempt to cash in on the pony car craze. Though it had much in common with the Mustang, right down to the V8 engine, it never escaped the perception of being a badge-engineered clone. Today, it's a footnote in Fox body history. Let's dig into what made the Capri RS tick and why almost nobody remembers it. The Mercury Capri first appeared in 1970 as a rebadged Ford of Europe coupe, but by 1979, it had been fully Americanized and placed on Ford's new Fox platform. The same architecture underpinning the Mustang, Fairmont, and many others. By 1986, the Capri had become a sporty three-door hatchback built on the Fox body unibody structure, sharing engines, interiors, and chassis with the Mustang, but it had its own quirks. Bulging fender flares, a distinctive bubble-back rear window, introduced in 1983. A different grille and taillights to set it apart from Ford's pony car. Despite these styling cues, buyers largely saw it as a Mustang in a Mercury suit, which made it hard to sell on personality. In 1986, the Capri RS was Mercury's performance flagship for the model line, featuring a 5.0-liter high-output V8, producing 200 horsepower, sequential multi-port fuel injection, new for 1986, a 5-speed manual transmission, optional traction, lock rear differential, front and rear sway bars, firmer suspension tuning, RS trim upgrades like stripes, badges, and sport seats. This was the same powertrain as the 1986 Mustang GT, meaning the Capri RS could hustle 0 to 60 in about 6.5 seconds, with quarter-mile times around 15 seconds flat. But performance didn't equal popularity. The biggest problem for the Capri RS was its lack of identity. Mercury dealers didn't know how to market it. Was it a performance car? A luxury coupe? Buyers saw no reason to pick it over the Mustang, which had more aftermarket support, a stronger brand image, and a large enthusiast base. Ford itself prioritized the Mustang, leaving the Capri as an afterthought. And despite some visual differences, the Capri wasn't different enough to carve out its own market. It was just similar enough to confuse people. and just different enough to alienate hardcore Mustang fans. The 1986 model year marked the last year for the Mercury Capri in the United States. Sales had been declining for years, and Ford was refocusing Mercury as a more traditional, comfort-oriented brand. By the end, the Capri was sold in tiny numbers, fewer than 20,000 units in 1986. The RS trim was mostly ignored by performance enthusiasts. After 1986, the Capri name vanished, at least in North America. Though Ford would later revive the Capri name for a Mazda-based convertible, sold as a 1991-94 Mercury Capri, the 1986 RS was the last true V8-powered, rear-wheel drive Capri. Today, the 1986 Mercury Capri RS is something of a curiosity for collectors and Fox body fans. It shares the same 5.0-liter powertrain as the beloved '86 Mustang GT. The bubble-back hatch and flared fenders make it stand out slightly. It's rarer than most Mustangs of the era, making it appealing for those seeking something different. But its lack of name recognition means it's still undervalued. Ironically, its obscurity is its appeal now. Enthusiasts who stumble across a Capri RS at a car show often find themselves doing a double take. Wait, what is that Mustang-looking thing? The 1986 Mercury Capri RS was fast, well-equipped, and based on a solid platform. But in a market where image and identity mattered, it simply couldn't compete with its louder, prouder sibling. It was the Mustang's twin that never got invited to the party. And yet for the diehards, it offers something unique, a last gasp of Mercury performance before the brand slid fully into sedan and minivan anonymity. It's the Fox body you forgot existed, but maybe one worth remembering. Number 2. In the 1960s, the American car market was booming and diversifying. Buyers wanted more choices, and automakers were eager to fill every niche. Chrysler, trying to elevate Plymouth beyond its working-class image, introduced a bold new nameplate in 1966, the Plymouth VIP. The idea was simple. Take the full-size Fury and add a layer of luxury, pitting it directly against Ford's LTD and Chevrolet's Caprice. But by 1967, it was already clear the VIP wasn't making the impression Chrysler hoped for. Despite upscale trimmings and a solid platform, the VIP never truly felt like a luxury car and never caught on with buyers. Let's explore why the 1967 Plymouth VIP is so rarely remembered today. The VIP, very important Plymouth, was based on the Fury platform, Chrysler's full-size bread-and-butter sedan. For 1967, it shared its underpinnings with the Fury 30, but attempted to go upmarket with a unique formal roofline, heavier use of chrome and trim, plusher interior appointments, more sound-deadening materials, a VIP badge on the C-pillars and dashboard. It was offered in a 2-door hardtop, a 4-door hardtop, both available with bench or optional bucket seats. Plymouth hoped it would attract buyers moving upmarket, perhaps stepping out of a Belvedere or stepping sideways from a Chevy Caprice. But this strategy had flaws. On paper, the VIP looked and sounded like a luxury car, but in reality, it lacked the presence of true premium competitors. The exterior added extra moldings, but retained the Fury's basic body lines. Inside, it featured wood grain appliques, a padded dash, and cloth or vinyl upholstery. Standard features included power steering and power brakes, with options like AC, cruise control, and tilt wheel. Yet compared to a Buick LeSabre or Mercury Marquis, it felt like lipstick on a Fury. There was no real design innovation, just badge engineering in a class where perceived prestige mattered most. Mechanically, the VIP was no different than a Fury 3. Base engine, 318 cubic inch V8, 2-barrel carb, 230 horsepower. Optional engines, 383, 2-barrel and 4-barrel, 4-barrel, and even the 440 Super Commando for high-performance buyers. Transmission, 3-speed manual or torque flight, 3-speed automatic. Rear-wheel drive, of course. This gave the VIP decent highway manners and the smooth ride expected of a full-size sedan, but nothing luxury exclusive. If you ordered a VIP with the 318, It looked like a premium car but drove like a taxicab. Buyers noticed Plymouth was fighting an uphill battle. Ford's LTD, launched in 1965, had instant success. It looked formal and had a reputation for quiet comfort. Chevrolet's Caprice, also introduced in 1965, quickly became the best-selling luxury trim full-size in America. The VIP, however, had no name recognition and competed within its own showroom against the better-known Fury 3. Buyers didn't see the added cost as justified, especially when Mercury or Oldsmobile offered more prestigious alternatives. Sales for the VIP were modest, only about 18,000 units sold in 1967. That was a tiny fraction compared to Ford's 300,000 plus LTDs. After a few short years, 1966 to 1969, the VIP was dropped. It never caught on, and its name never returned. Why? It lacked a unique identity apart from the Fury. It didn't project luxury in a way buyers believed. Chrysler never committed to separating the VIP from the rest of the Plymouth lineup. By 1970, the Fury lineup was restructured and expanded, with VIP content blended into higher trim Fury models, quietly retiring the VIP name. Today, the 1967 Plymouth VIP is rarely seen at car shows, largely ignored by collectors, overshadowed by Mopar muscle of the same era, like the GTX and Roadrunner. The 1967 Plymouth VIP was Chrysler's attempt to climb the prestige ladder, but it was too little, too late. It lacked the boldness to challenge the growing personal luxury segment, and it couldn't overcome its bargain brand roots. It serves as an example of how badge engineering doesn't equal brand elevation, especially when buyers are chasing image, status, and refinement. Number 1. When people hear Fox body, they usually think of Mustangs, maybe even the Mercury Capri. But back in the late 1970s and early 80s, the Fox platform carried a whole lineup of sedans, coupes, and wagons. The Ford Fairmont Futura, introduced in 1978 and facelifted for 1980, was Ford's attempt to inject some styling flair into its otherwise plain Jane compact. The result? A pseudo-sporty fastback coupe with a Thunderbird-style roofline, attached to one of the blandest, most utilitarian bodies in Ford's history. Today, the Fairmont Futura is barely a footnote, even among Fox body fans. Let's dig into why this curious compact coupe faded so fast. The Fairmont was introduced for the 1978 model year as Ford's replacement for the Maverick. It was lightweight rear-wheel drive, built on Ford's new Fox platform, which would underpin dozens of models for the next 25 years. The Fairmont lineup included sedans, wagons, and coupes, none of which were particularly exciting, but all of which sold well thanks to fuel efficiency, roomy interiors, low cost. The Futura, however, aimed to stand out, at least a little. The Futura Coupe introduced a more dramatic sloped, formal fastback roofline that was clearly inspired by the late 70s Thunderbird. It included wraparound rear window, angled sail panels to simulate a fastback look, available two-tone paint schemes, thin, chrome-accented grille, unique taillights and badging. The goal? Add some flair and prestige to a compact that otherwise looked like a rental car. It was Ford's way of saying, hey, we can do affordable and stylish. But in reality, the Futura was like a teenager in a tuxedo t-shirt, trying to look classy without the substance to back it up. Mechanically, the Futura was nothing special, and that was part of the problem. Base engine, 2.3-liter inline-4, 88 horsepower. Optional, 3.3-liter, inline-6, 4.2-liter Phi-8, and eventually a 5.0-liter V8 rare. Transmissions, 3-speed manual, 4-speed manual, or 3-speed automatic. Rear-wheel drive, unibody with McPherson struts in front, coil springs in rear. Performance? Tepid at best. Most Futuras came with the underpowered inline-6 or the base 4-cylinder, which struggled to haul the car's extra weight and styling around. Even when fitted with a V8, the car lacked the suspension and braking upgrades to feel sporty. The biggest issue with the 1980 Fairmont Futura wasn't the roofline, it was the confused market positioning. Too bland and underpowered to attract performance buyers. Too impractical, two-door coupe body for families. Too odd-looking for conservative compact shoppers. Too cheap to feel like a luxury alternative. It ended up being a car with no real audience. Unlike the Mustang, which fully embraced the Fox body's performance potential, the Futura pretended to be premium without the performance or refinement to match. And in the early 1980s, with rising fuel prices and a weak economy, buyers weren't interested in fake luxury on a compact car. Despite being part of the Fox body family, the Futura has been largely erased from car culture. Why? It wasn't fast. It wasn't rare enough to be collectible. It wasn't good-looking in hindsight. It never developed a cult following like the Mustang or even the LTD LX. By the mid-1980s, the Fairmont was dropped entirely. The Futura name was revived briefly in Australia, but in the US it was gone, and almost no one noticed. Today, you're more likely to see a Fairmont stripped and turned into a drag car than restored to stock condition. Even then, it's usually the Sedan or Wagon because they're lighter and simpler. The 1980 Ford Fairmont Futura is a textbook case of a car that tried to be stylish without substance. Its unique roofline couldn't overcome its mediocre performance, confused identity, and utilitarian roots. Ford thought adding a sloped rear window would create appeal, but buyers weren't fooled, and history has barely remembered the attempt. In the end, the Futura proved that a fancy roofline doesn't make a car memorable, especially when the rest of it feels like an afterthought.